Hey dear, Zumzi here, and I don't know if we've just had a really good year for horror and thrillers, or if my antidepressants are just really kicking in good right now, but I've been really enjoying the past releases, and this month I am excited to talk about the horror and thriller releases. And FYI, if you hear weird construction noise in the background, there's just been like chainsaws going on all day, so just consider it the sweet horror ambiance of chainsaws going on in the background. I guess it's kind of thematic here. It works. I'll just go with it. First on my list, we have one of my most highly anticipated thrillers of the year, and that is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. The story follows Maddie, who lives in the desolate wilderness with her husband. However, one winter, the game is scarce, and all the bears should be sleeping away in their dens. However, one day she finds footprints in the snow that are way too big to be a bear, and she finds a mutilated deer. I forget, I'll have to look it up again. She finds a mutilated animal arranged in a pattern that no animal should be capable of doing. So she is faced with a monster of uncanny cunning, as well as a monster within her own home. So this is an interesting book. It's part domestic thriller, part survival thriller, creature feature with a big scary monster. And I absolutely loved the monster in this novel. Like, I'm going to keep this spoiler free, but I was like poggy, like, yeah, every time I caught a glimpse of it. It felt to me kind of like the monster from The Ritual, and that is a compliment. The Ritual is an amazing survival thriller slash horror, as well, with body horror, as well as the creature feature subgenre of horror. So it's okay for books to have horror and thriller elements, and this has a bunch going on. So this story also has the domestic thriller element between Maddie and her husband, because her husband treats her terribly. He's very possessive. He won't even let her listen to music because he says it's of the devil. She can't read books, and it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome situation going on. So she doesn't want to upset him. She doesn't want to set him off for fear of what he'll do to like punish her. So fair warning, there's domestic violence involved in this book. But her husband is determined to go after this big creature like as trophy game, and he keeps pissing the monster off. So he's endangering everyone. And then there's also the element of cryptozoologists who are fascinated by like this phenomenon going on and are like intruding on their property and pissing the husband off. So poor Maddie has to juggle all of this. She wants to keep herself alive. She wants to keep the cryptozoologists alive from her husband. So this is like an interesting page-turning thriller, and I was just along for the ride. I will say, the one thing, this was so close to 5 stars for me. I rated it 4. But I wish there had been a thematic connection or something more done with the monster subplot. It felt like it was tied up really quickly, and kind of the ending was shoehorned in at the end. I wish there is like a connection between Maddie and the monster, or there is a thematic connection between the monster and her husband, because there's so many awesome metaphors you can do with monsters, like vampires are lust and werewolves are bloodlust, like violence and hot-bloodedness. So I wish there is more done with the symbolism of the monster itself, but otherwise this is an interesting little atmospheric, cold in the desolate mountain survival thriller that I really recommend. Okay, next we have a YA I was super excited about because of the title, Marry Shelley Club. And if you know anything about me, Mary Shelley is my goth queen. I love the romantic poet so much, and if I could travel back in time, the moment I would want to travel back to is the night that Frankenstein was created, the story. So it starts off with all the romantic poets like Byron and Percy and Mary together at Byron's vacation home, and they come up with a contest where whoever writes the best ghost story wins. And I would say Mary Shelley won. Anyways, but this I promise this story has a point. It relates to this book, and I'll get more into that. But first, the synopsis of the book. Sorry, I gotta geek out and nerd about my romantic poets. But anyways. So the Mary Shelley Club follows Rachel Chavez, who after a home invasion, she becomes obsessed with horror to cope, which is something I can relate to because I use horror as catharsis from past trauma. So that I can relate to. And she's so obsessed with horror that when she transfers schools, she hears rumors of a top secret club called the Mary Shelley Club that pulls pranks on students. So she's initiated and joins in, and she finds out that they try to tell the best ghost story by reenacting pranks, and they have a contest for who can pull the best prank on the student body, on other students. However, as the story goes on, the pranks become more and more dangerous, and she gets more than she bargained for. And I have to say, unfortunately, this book is actually one of my first disappointments of the year. I was so into the horror themed story, and I loved the idea of like pulling pranks, and I was interested in the pranks themselves. However, I feel like the characters fell really flat to me. I felt like it was so much a homage to horror that it isn't its own story. Like during dialogue between the club members, all they would do is like rapid fire, well, not completely all they would do. There were some other more deep conversations, but a lot of it was just rapid fire listing off as many horror references as possible, and I felt like that took away from the opportunity of character development or establishing characters' relationships with each other. So for me, it was kind of the same issue that I had with Ready Player One, that there's so many pop culture references that it just kind of became annoying. It's like, please tie those references thematically into the story. Work with them, don't just leave them hanging for no purpose at all, because what is it doing there? It's slowing down the plot. Okay, but anyways, yeah, unfortunately, I wanted to really fall in love with this book, but I didn't. I loved the premise, just not its execution. Okay, next we are gonna shake things up a little with a manga called A School Frozen in Time by the same writer who did Your Lie in April, and the story follows 8 friends who, on a day of record-breaking snow, arrive to their school and they realize that all the clocks are frozen, and the time is the same exact time that their friend had taken their own life at their school festival 2 months earlier. And as they start discussing, like, oh, wait, what's going on here? Like, all the windows are locked, the doors are locked, people can come in, but we can't get out. They come to the realization when they see on the board, do you remember? That maybe one of them is the ghost of the friend who had committed suicide, because none of them have any recollection of that day. So they're forced to confront their own memories as well as each other. In case you can't tell from the synopsis, this is a very heavy book that tackles heavy themes like loneliness and love and bullying. It's a very emotionally character-driven manga, and I feel like because of that, or just how the way the beginning is set up, Volume 1 is off to a slower start than I was expecting, so it very much focuses on the characters' interpersonal relationships, but it is heartbreaking in parts. Like, the dialogue is very raw and earnest. I just wish that the artwork was as raw as the dialogue. Yes! That's actually Sophie. Usually it's Bella who cries. But Sophie says, yes, the dialogue is so raw. I just wish the artwork was as good as the story. I felt like the artwork really fell flat to me. Regardless, though, of the small issues I have with Volume 1, I feel like this story has so much potential for big emotional payoff later. Like, so far I'm getting more psychological thriller and a drama than horror, but we'll see down the road. I'm really excited because when I first read the synopsis, I was thinking of The Drifting Classroom, which is another horror manga classic, and sure enough, the end of Volume 1 ends on a cliffhanger and a reference to Drifting Classroom, so I'm excited to see where this story goes. Okay, last but not least, we have The Drowning Kind, and this story follows socialist worker Jax, who receives a series of frantic phone calls from her sister Lexi. However, she dismisses it as another manic episode, so she doesn't pick up the phone or call her back. However, the next day, she finds out that her sister is found dead in the pool of their family estate. So, guilt-ridden and driven by grief, she returns home to her family estate, and she begins to try to unravel the mystery of the pool. And when I say pool, at first I thought it was like a chlorinated pool. No, this is like a natural spring water pool. Only this one is said to have mythical properties and is able to grant wishes at a terrible cost. Okay, I was really into this one. It just drips and oozes creepiness and atmosphere with each page. Like, there's some really gnarly, creepy descriptions. However, what really sold this book for me was how real and vulnerable the characters felt. Like, Jax was driven by grief and she is imperfect. Like, it's about family dysfunction. Her family's messed up and it's about relationships. And one thing I do also have to point out is that it's alternating between two different points of view. So it has the present with Jax, and then it also has someone in the past who really wants a baby. So she makes a wish to the pool for a baby, only that comes at a cost. And that side of the story kind of focuses on a mother's love and desperation. So I really enjoyed this story. It kind of reminded me of Pet Sematary. So if you're into bargains at terrible costs that horrify people and that are really complex stories, I really recommend this one. The one negative I will say about this book is that it is slow in parts. It is definitely a slow burn. However, the ending revelation and scene was so haunting and so satisfying, so I really enjoyed the ending of this one. Well, those are all the books that are in the thriller and horror category that I read for this month. If you have any new releases that you enjoyed, or if you just picked up an old horror thriller book or manga that you want to recommend, let me know down in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya!